MySQL Workbench provides a very good user interface for database administration, but it is very limited in providing forms and reports interfaces to database. For example, if we start with ECD and open any of these tables, you can see the entire table records are here. On the right side, there is results grid, form editor, which shows records one by one. We can use these tools to progress through the records, go to the end, add a new row, which allows us to add a new record for this table, and then click apply, which creates insert command to the table. You can click on apply to add the record or cancel it at this point. And of course, since there is a relationship between stock keeping unit, the primary key in this table, and foreign key, we need to make sure there's an existing matching primary key in item table. You can also get the field types and query status, which is details about the query that returns the records. In form editor, we can look at all records and change them if we want to. And again, we need to click on apply. And that's it. There is no other reporting tool which is user-friendly we can use here. And that is left to interfaces built by programming or other tools available. In this module, we'll use tools that are already on your computers. Excel is one of them. We can connect Excel to MySQL, download the data, edit the data, upload again, and use utilities in Excel to create charts and summary reports. Since we're going to make changes to tables, let's create a new schema and a test table. So we'll go to create new schema, and let's name this test report. Double click the schema, make it the current schema, and create a table. Let's call this order table and create just two columns, one of them primary key and the other one date. The primary key is integer and not null. The second one, order date, and the date type is date. Create the table. And open the records. Well, this table has no records yet. Let's create just two rows. Order ID and order date. And click apply to commit. Now we go to Excel. Under data tab, MySQL for Excel tool is available. Click and you'll see your connections. A double click will open it and look for the schema you created. This is my schema. By double clicking, I will see the schema objects. There's just one table. Double clicking the table, I will open the tools, import MySQL data or edit. By clicking on import, we'll see a view of those records. Import, right? Later we can edit, we can append Excel data to table. If you're going to use the data, just dump the data from SQL table or query into this Excel worksheet and use it for reporting. That's the end of the connection. We can start over here. If you're going to edit the data or add data from Excel to MySQL, we can work here. Clicking on Edit MySQL Data, we'll enter Edit mode. And we'll see the tool appearing here on the worksheet. Now we can start adding records or changing records. We start with 3 and a new date. And even using a formula, today we return the date. At any point I can click Commit Changes. Completed successfully and click OK. Now we'll go back to MySQL to see if the changes are committed, and we'll see these two new records. These records were added from Excel. And please note that the date format is consistent. The date format is different in Excel comparing to MySQL, but then when we upload or edit the records, the system will get the difference. Now we go to a different worksheet. Say we are going to upload some new data, append them to the existing records of the same table. Here we have 4 new records, order ID and date. Select the 2 columns and click on Append Excel Data to Table. So we still have the connection, both parts show up. The column we have in the data sheet and from the database. We don't want to append the column headers, so first row contains column names. One step we need to do here, we need to map the data. Which one of these records go to which column? Okay, so what we do here is selecting a column, dragging and dropping onto the column in the lower part. The second column, the color code shows that is already mapped because it's date and we do have one date column there. When mapping is done, click on Append and we get the message operation is done. So go back to MySQL and refresh the view and see the new records are added to the table. We need a query that answers questions like the statistics of sales, which cities, which products are selling better, which weekdays or months are better for selling each product category, and similar questions. So we need data fields from multiple tables, from customer, sale, sale item, and details about the items and channels. So we'll go create a query and test it before creating and saving the view. Selecting the fields we think will be required. Customer data, address, items, categories, sale price, quantities, brands, and the 5 tables that are involved: customer, sale, sale ID, item, and channel. Test the query, make sure it runs fine, and then we'll save this as a view. So we'll copy the same code into creating a new view. Access users can just save the query as a query. Click on Apply, showing the complete code, and Apply. And Finish. I change the name to Customer Sales, something that makes sense later when we reference this in other forms. We're going to download this data into Excel. So we'll go back to Excel. in a new worksheet, go to the connection. If you do still have an open connection from the previous download, we need to close that or go back. So these two buttons, either close or go back. If you want to go back, we'll see all the schema we need. We'll double click that and show all the objects, tables, and now views. See the saved view, customer sales, select and import. We have the option to create a pivot table right away or create this later in Excel. Just click on import and we'll have the entire data set. We can close the connection if we don't need it anymore. To answer questions about to summarize data, for example, sales of categories of merchandise to different months or quarters, we need a tool that can use multiple variables. Pivot tables can take 3 variables and aggregate values at different levels. So that's a good tool to use here for reporting summary data. Go to Insert, Pivot Table. As long as we have selected one of those cells in the data range, the entire data range is selected, and then we create the pivot table in a new worksheet. Click OK. Pivot table tool and the list of fields. We need to aggregate sales by volume through months and categories. So we can select category, put it into columns area. Categories will be column headers. Save date into rows. Date will be row header by any level of aggregation. At this step, quantity sold into values. And then we'll have a table summarizing quantity of each one of those merchandise categories sold in each month. You can expand it or collapse it and see the subtotals. Now we can use more visual effects to compare the values. For example, we can select all monthly sales, not including the totals, under Home tab, Conditional Formatting, and Data Bars. To use a common scale, we can select the headers and give all columns equal size to see the relative size of all numbers. We can also change the level of aggregation. For example, the first column, the row headers, these are date. If we right click on any of these cells and go to group, we can change the grouping level. For example, here we can select the quarters. We can still keep months and days or remove them for now, and see our statistics by quarters. We can repeat the same conditional formatting by data bars to compare different quarters, and of course make columns equal size. We'll go back to our customer sales data and add 2 columns for subtotal of sales and profits. So subtotal is sale price times quantity. Since this is a data table, one formula automatically works for the entire column. And the profit is the difference of sale price and cost times quantity. We can use these 2 new columns in our summary data and pivot tables. And one more time, insert a pivot table. And this time we include sales, total sales. Category into columns area, date into rows area, and sales subtotal into values. We do have total sales. The same way we can compare the numbers or visualize by using conditional formatting. can use a different color for comparing grand total of categories or months. And we can show numbers or just the bars. Let's go with grand total of months into conditional formatting and use data bars with different color. Do have the numbers and bars together. One more time, once this column is selected, you can go into conditional formatting and manage rules. Select that rule and edit. One of the options here is to show bar only, do not the numbers. Of course, there's more options here. Just using this one and clicking OK. We just have the relative size of the numbers, which is a different way to demonstrate the numbers. We can use different types of charts to show data as well. If we go to Insert tab, while the pivot table is selected, go to Pivot Chart and select. We can select any type of chart we need. Here we do have too many months and categories, so we need to go with an option that shows relative magnitude of the data clearly. For example, one of the options here we have radar chart. It will summarize the data better than a column chart because it will have all the months around, and then each month different categories along the radius of the center to the month. We do have filters in many different places. For example, for the categories, if you're going to filter out all categories but freezers, let's chart, go to category drop down, remove the check from all and just select freezer. We do have the chart as well as the numbers in the table just for freezer. As you see, there's a filter also on the table. We can use that to clear the filter or select multiple items. It will be reflected on the table and the chart. We can change chart type. If you right click on the chart, change chart type to any other type of chart we need. For example, column, surface chart, or other types of charts available. Go back to column chart, which shows both categories. Can change the aggregation level into quarters. So if you right click on any of those months and group, here you can hold Control select quarters and then remove days. So the aggregation will be in months and quarters. You can expand or collapse quarters and see what happens when we collapse quarters. Chart is changing at the same time. If we expand, the chart will expand as well. Now we go back to the original datasheet and add weekdays. There's a function, text, extracts the weekday from a date. So for the value, we reference the date, and the second argument after a comma and a space. For these enclosed in double quotes, and close the parentheses. It will work for the entire column and extracts the weekday from the date. Now we insert a new pivot table. In this new pivot table, we're going to compare sales across different markets, different channels, for different categories. It's more complex comparing to the previous pivot table and pivot chart. So first, we add weekdays, the newly created column, as the row header, add channel as column header, and as the second variable in rows, we add category. And then at the end, sales subtotal for the body of the table. We can use the design tools of pivot table to apply different colors if we need to. We can collapse and see the results, aggregate in different days, insert a pivot chart. Here I'm going to use a line chart. Comparing different outlets and channels, average of weekdays. Here we're using the total. We can easily go to values and then in value field settings, change that sum to count or average. Well, in this case, we go back to total. So go back to value field settings and back to sum. We can apply filters. For example, for category, we can use the filter on chart and use it for computers only. You can see sales of computers, different weekdays, different markets. Removing the filter and using other tools. Here I use slicer. Insert a slicer under Analyze tab of Pivot Chart Tools. Well, this slicer is about all columns of the table. I'm going to use category, and here is a more dynamic filter. See all categories. By clicking on each category, we can see the results on the table and chart. Or we can use the slicer for a different variable. I'm selecting and deleting the slicer and go insert a new slicer on brand. We get a list of all brands. Now we can filter or slice the data based on brand. I can add a timeline as well. Under Analyze tab, insert a timeline. Let's say for year 2016, which is the year of data collection, click on each month. For the selected brand, we can see the sales. We can clear the brand filter and look at the timeline for all brands. Any of these filterings can create a snapshot of the data we're looking for, both in numbers and charts. These are a few things you can do with pivot tables and pivot charts. You can use all Excel tools for summarizing and charting. as a report of the data you have downloaded from database.